Welcome to the Furlo Capital Real Estate Podcast, where we dive into the intricacies of passive real estate investing. And our mission is to equip people to invest wisely in both property and residence so that we can improve our wealth and build housing. No, how's that? So we can build our wealth and improve housing together. Yeah, that's it. I got it that time. I'm James, and this is my wife, Jessie.
Hi.
Yeah, nothing like improving wealth and building housing. I guess that's a thing, but that's development. But that's not what we're about. We're more about classic real estate investing.
I see what you did there.
Yeah,
Building wealth and improving housing.
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to
Not
say.
improving wealth and building housing.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's a very different podcast. Though,
Interesting.
for the record, or interestingly, today or this afternoon, I got to spend some time doing some property maintenance, which isn't building, but definitely did some building. It was kind of interesting, two things specifically. The first one was, it was super easy. I had a roof that some shingles had blown off of because of a recent windstorm. And so I just had to go up, and they were just sitting there up on top. They were fully intact. They were in good shape. It was kind of weird that they popped off.
That is strange.
Makes me honestly a little concerned. Like, how is these not tacked down? Whatever. I happen to have some roofing nails with me, so I just went, put them all down, and it was good to go. And then the second one was probably more interesting. So my tenant, he's on HUD, and so they get to participate in the government paying for some of his rent. And part of what they do with that is they do an annual inspection. And so screening for someone who's on HUD is fairly easy. Like, you don't have to worry about, well, you have to worry less about the income side, but all the other stuff still matters. But then again, like the unit itself has to qualify, and there are certain restrictions. And a lot of them, like, they make sense. There has to be a fire alarm somewhere in the building or in certain spots.
Sure.
There has to be running water, that kind of stuff.
There's like minimum standards for making a place livable and good. And
yeah, exactly.
That's what HUD has decided.
An interesting one is that there needs to be proper ventilation in a bathroom, which could either be a window or a fan. And in our apartment building, there actually are a couple bathrooms that are in the middle that don't have proper ventilation. So even though a person might qualify, the unit itself doesn't.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they couldn't rent that particular unit.
Correct.
So why, like, if HUD has decided this is what makes a unit livable,
Yeah.
why do units exist that don't meet that criteria?
Oh, because when this one was built, it was before all that happened, essentially. Yeah. And why someone hasn't added a fan? Because it's, well, second floor or first floor in the middle. Yeah, it's just super difficult.
There's nowhere to vent it out.
Because ideally you have some sort of ventilation, because
Sure.
the water causes a problem in it. And it does for us, and it has to have regular cleaning. But yeah, it's super fascinating. Anyways, they do these inspections.
Yeah.
And this particular, and when they do the inspection, they send you a letter. Everything is like on paper letter. They don't do anything over email.
Sure.
It's just, it's
documented.
It's classic type of stuff.
Government system?
Yeah. And so I got this letter that says, hey, we did the inspection. There were a couple things that need to be fixed. One of them happened to be, they're like, he needs a new fire alarm. Which I was like, oh, okay, good to know. And his heater it's not good. I was like, oh, interesting. So I actually called him up and was like, tell me more about this heater situation. Like, what do you mean? And he was like, yeah, it's just in a bad spot because it's really tight. There's a lot of stuff. He's like, what you need to do is, install a new one that's higher up on the wall so that it can have heat and it's not covered by stuff. So I go and I check it out today, and I tell him, I'm like, you have a fire alarm. Where is it? He goes, oh, it's behind the television that I put up. He goes, so it's not accessible. I was like, all right, thanks. And so I installed a new one. I was like, well, whatever. If that one ever goes off, so be it. I guess you have to figure that out. But here's one that is accessible and testable and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I was looking at this heater, and he put his bed over the baseboard heater. The heater works totally fine. There's no problems with it. And I just thought it was super interesting that the inspector, instead of saying to the tenant, hey, you're covering up this heater in an unsafe manner, move your stuff, instead he came back to me and said, hey, you need to move the heater.
Yeah, why is that the solution if there's a functional heater in the unit?
Yeah, I feel like I've met my end of the criteria piece here.
Right.
And instead it's going to cost me a few thousand, I don't know if it's going to be $1,000, but it might be $1,500 to buy the materials and hire an electrician to move this thing and make sure it all works to code. It's kind of a pain when I'm like, there's a heater and it works. And the problem is
like no other spot where he could possibly put his stuff?
No, I mean, he'd have to rearrange his things. Here's the other really weird part. He's been living there and on HUD for 12 years. And in the time that we've owned it, this, like, it's never come up as an issue.
They've done inspections before.
Yeah, well, they do it every single year.
So they got a new inspector?
I don't know. No, I don't know. It's super weird. So I'm going to make a call on Monday and be like, hey,
here's the dealio.
what's up with the heater? I feel like this criteria is met. It works. Like, this isn't on me. And so, anyways, we're going to have that conversation.
Yeah, the reason why it's not functioning is because the tenant has things in front of it.
Yes. Oh, I mean, the reason why it is considered unsafe, because it is functioning. But, yeah. I mean, the heater works. Like, you can turn it on.
So it's considered unsafe because there's stuff in front of it, which is what the inspector said?
Because he put his bed, so it's a baseboard heater that's on the wall.
Yeah.
And he put his bed in the corner up against the wall. And so, like, his mattress, not his mattress, but his bed frame is above it. His headboard specifically is above the heater. Yeah. Yeah. That was my reaction. Like, oh, all right. So I get to have that phone call in the morning and just kind of figure out, like,
with HUD or with?
Yeah, with HUD. Yeah.
Because you already talked to your tenant.
To my anonymous tenant.
I mean.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And that is not at all what I wanted to talk about in this podcast. But yeah, just kind of an interesting.
I never know what you're going to talk about. So
I know. No,
I'll just go with it.
It's just kind of. Yeah. Anyways, just kind of an interesting, like, all right, that's something that you have to deal with when you have HUD tenants. I mean, it is nice because you do get a check on the first of the month every single month for whatever percentage of it is. Sure. That is nice, but then you just get weird stuff like this. Which you're like, okay, I guess I got to deal with that. Which I'll admit, like, it's an older unit, and he's lived there the entire time. So I have only gone in and I've fixed stuff. I've never gone through and like, I'm gonna make this thing better. Like that hasn't happened yet. But again, I think in this case, I'm like, this isn't on me. Like the heater's fine. Anyways, just kind of fascinating. I have also in the last couple of weeks looked at a couple of other properties to purchase. And in this particular case, both of them were motels. And so a little bit different than what I normally look at.
Well, motels is like a loose definition of that second one, right? I guess it's used as a motel.
No, it's a motel. Like I
don't know. In my brain, I have this...
Quiz time. Quiz time. What is the official definition of a motel? What makes something a motel versus, say, a hotel?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the mo and the hotel?
The mo and the
Gotta be careful there.
Hotel.
We gotta keep this a clean podcast. Yeah, do you know? Let's see.
Okay,
people are screaming at the answer right now.
Yeah, they probably are.
Go ahead.
A hotel is like based on nightly rent, and a motel is based on more short term.
How do you get more short term than nightly? You're talking about hourly?
I mean like not more short term, but it's like short term rental, like multiple days versus like I can
like
just say
rent out
and
a week.
night. Yeah, you rent out a week or like a weekend. Or,
no, that's not the answer.
But a motel, in my brain, seems like it's less of like shared property. You know, like you wouldn't call a Sun River house a motel.
Correct.
All right, what's the definition?
So, okay, yeah, fair enough. It's very simple. On a motel, all the doors are on the outside, and you can park your car in front of your door. In a hotel, you can't. It's more dormitory style. Although there's hallways and everything, and there's just a normal parking lot.
Okay.
That's it.
That's the only difference.
That's the official difference, yeah. So, like, with either one of them, you can rent it for a night, you can rent it for a week. No big deal. Now, you might have different size operators who say, hey, yeah, if you want to stay for a month, cool, no big deal. And people will tend to do that with a motel because, well, they can park right in front of it and treat it as if it's kind of their
like
own little unit. As opposed to having to go through the lobby and take an elevator or whatever.
What if it's a combination? That's just a hotel?
A combination.
Yeah, like some of the units you can access from the inside and some you can access from the outside.
Yeah, those are usually, that's like a hotel, I think. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're thinking... Yeah, I guess we've been to some like resort.
Yeah, like the place that I just stayed this past weekend.
Yeah, okay.
Was like a conference center type thing, and they had several different types of buildings that they had kind of accumulated or bought over time. And some of them were like, you park and then you like motel style.
Oh,
but then some of the buildings were definitely more hotel style.
Okay,
like you have to walk into the lobby, and
it was
go
officially
up to
called
retreat center.
So neither of those.
Neither of those.
Okay. Well, you know.
But they rent it out. They run it more like a conference center. I guess they don't rent out individual rooms to random people.
Yeah.
At least I don't think they do.
Okay. So we'll put that in the neither category. It's its own thing. So the first one that I went and looked at was a 60-unit motel with a restaurant attached to it. Okay. And it has some interesting features about it. Number one, it was in a very small city that was near Grants Pass, but it was on a highway that's leading out to the coast.
How big of a city? 10,000 people?
Yeah, it's like 10 to 15. People? But it's been growing like 10, 20% year over year for the last few years. So it's growing.
What's the industry there? I don't think I ever asked that.
I don't know.
Like logging, fishing?
I never got far enough to find out.
Is it because it's near Grants Pass, but
it's like 20 minutes outside of Grants Pass.
Is it like okay, I'm gonna show people how lame I am on direction and sense of direction. Is that like near the coast or inland?
Yeah,
or
going towards the coast.
Towards the coast.
Yeah,
but not like on the water.
Correct. Okay. No, it's still like a half hour from the water.
Okay, cool.
It's like in between.
I'm just trying to is there fishing or is there?
Nope, it's just dry land. That's all it is. There's a highway that goes through.
There you go.
But it's the main pass to the coast. Yeah. So another interesting feature about this particular one. Oh, there's a restaurant that's attached to it. Yeah. And the motel itself is condemned completely. And it was 4 years ago, like boarded up, everything. Yikes. If you look at it on Google Maps from 2018, it looks totally fine. Like a normal, fully functioning, looks great. Because obviously that was more than 4 years ago. But now it's like there's a fence that goes all the way around it. Everything's boarded up.
Do you know like what the turning point was?
Yeah, I do. It was, actually they shared this story. And so they had some maintenance stuff to go in. And it had something to do with like, they needed a new water boiler heater system. And they ended up putting one in that was too small for what it should have been, which caused a problem to begin with. And then apparently what happened was she hired some electrician, unofficial kind of guy to do it. He didn't do it right. Oops. And what happened was the inspector was there checking on the work, and he put his hand on a panel and got electrocuted because it wasn't grounded properly.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so that was the trigger.
How does this happen?
Well, you don't hire a professional.
Oh my goodness. That's
a
problem.
So he ultimately was like, no, this is not safe. This is a not safe place. He's like, you need to shut this down until this thing gets remedied.
Sure.
And apparently there was enough other stuff that was going on that needed repairs that
they couldn't afford it.
Or she just decided she just shut it down instead of just getting it fixed and hiring the right person. From what I was able to gather from the owner, she was the kind of person, this wasn't the first place that has been condemned on her. And she would figure out like, okay, what's the minimum maintenance? And I'm going to do less than that. And part of that was by, again, just not hiring professionals.
Yeah.
We had two guys who gave us a tour of this place. And they clearly were like, dude, just random guys who were like, I can swing a hammer. And they were doing all the maintenance work. And yeah, it was very...
Previously, they were doing the maintenance work?
Yeah, previously, yeah, because obviously not much has been going on for the last few years.
Interesting.
And so she's in foreclosure, has also had a stroke, and she's not in foreclosure, she's going through bankruptcy. Oh. And so this is part of her, like, I just got to try to get rid of some assets to help with the bankruptcy problem, I guess. So what's going on? This was sad. It was priced at, I think it was 1.2, 1.3 million, which for a 60-unit place plus a restaurant is a fantastic deal, which is why I found out about it. And I was kind of like, all right, well, let's see how bad it is. And my thought was to go in and say, well, maybe let's turn it into like standard apartments, like maybe 30 apartments or something like that.
Sure.
And turn it into more like maybe affordable housing type stuff. And I like the fact that there was this restaurant because they were paying $5,000 a month. And I went, well, and she owned it free and clear, by the way. So I was like, well, maybe if I can structure this in such a way where the seller financing is able to have low enough payments where I can afford to essentially, I can afford all the holding costs while doing the rehab, go and make this place better, fix it up. And then at that point, it's like, I'm going to refinance the thing. And then I'm going to hold it for a few years before selling it was kind of the plan. 4 years is a long time for a building to go without anybody in it. It's kind of interesting. You wouldn't think it would be a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, houses need to like be lived in, and things need to happen, and fresh air needs to go through, and things need to be dried and heated and cooled and like all that stuff. So like there were a lot of signs of, well, rodent activity for one,
rodents,
mold, moisture, and then apparently there were some people who were in there. Some homeless folks got in and just started fires in some of the units.
Oh my gosh.
To
stay warm.
Yeah,
to
not
stay
to
warm.
burn the units, but to stay warm. Like they would bring in wood from somewhere,
Sure,
and just burn it to stay warm and stay dry and all that stuff. And so like the ceilings and the walls were just all blackened, and which made it really hard to take pictures because there's no electricity because it's all shut down. As you can imagine, they turned the electricity off on that thing when the catalyst happened.
Just out of curiosity, I'm pretty sure you told me this before. Let's say you were going to rehab this thing.
Yeah, okay.
How much money are we talking about to take it from its current state to a livable state? And how much money and how much time?
So there's a couple other issues with this property that inflate those numbers. For one, all of the drywall was made with asbestos laden drywall. And so you can't just tear that out and start over. You actually have to do a remediation process. Company. 4 years ago, they were quoted $250,000 to do it. That was 4 years ago.
Without all the inflation.
Without all the inflation and all the other stuff. My guess is that that's more like a $500,000 job, especially given all of the mold everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the asbestos anymore. And so
interesting.
So that's an expense that like would have to happen. But when I first got into it, I wasn't anticipating that. I didn't learn that until I got there.
Right.
I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
And so maybe I didn't. I just forgot. But
so all right, if you were to like crunch the numbers,
my guess when I was kind of looking through it and figuring out what would have to be done. Oh, it also became very clear that each of the units were divided by brick walls. So my idea of combining something wouldn't work anymore.
Wouldn't work.
So you'd have to keep it as 60 units, which in some ways keeps it easier. But now we're talking about going from essentially hotel rooms that don't have kitchens or any appliances to like, okay, now we're going to add 60 stoves and refrigerators and
to make them apartments.
All the stuff. Yeah. And cabinets and all that stuff. And so and they're going to be small, like efficiency studio, like super small. And just all of a sudden those numbers, like they just ballooned really quick.
Yeah.
My guess was this was going to be, this is a huge range, but a $1 to $2 million project.
So the rehab cost.
Yeah. That's after you remediate.
Yeah.
To the point where, oh, and by the way, when we got to see the restaurant, it was also in disrepair. There were leaks everywhere. There were deferred maintenance everywhere. Yeah. And it was bad enough that the restaurant owners hadn't been paying rent since March because they were just like, no, we refuse to until you fix things. And she never did. So this was a real money pit. And so I got done and went, honestly, the best thing to do here is to bulldoze it and start all over. That's the cheapest route to go because you're going to end up redoing all the siding. You're going to redo all the windows. You're going to redo all the doors. You're going to redo all the insides. Like the roof needed to be replaced. At this point, you're like, and given all the moisture damage, I don't even know what the framing looks like.
Sure.
So, and it's a slab, the entire thing, which means all of the plumbing goes through the concrete. So if you want to change anything, So at that point, you're like, might as well just start all over. And
so as a development project, how much would obviously you have to do all the remediation like you would anyways because of safety issues. But then let's say you remediate it and now you just want to bulldoze the other garbage off and do a I
don't know, but it's a few $100,000 to do it.
To like tear down a building.
Yeah.
And then you have all the development costs.
Yeah, a lot of it's just off hauling it to the dump. That's the big expense.
Interesting.
Tearing it down is not that hard.
Right. Just smash it.
But it was on a big lot. And so that was my other let's get rid of this building because it had just a bunch of wasted space in the back. Lot? To a developer. Or that's what you do. You'd build and just actually use the entire lot up is how you would approach it.
Interesting.
But I don't have I don't have the funds for it. I don't have the experience for it. All that stuff. And so I looked
Sad
at it.
Day.
Yeah. Well, I thought potentially for like half a second, I was like, well, maybe I could wholesale this thing. What if I bought it, went through the hard part of figuring it all out, and then maybe not get it shovel ready, but like pretty close to it, and sell that to a developer and say, and really my thought was not to just sell it for cash, but to go, hey, I have this thing, it's ready. This is my contribution into the deal. You pay for the actual development stuff and the people and all the materials. This would be my contribution for some percentage of it. And then, because I think you could make I bet you could add 80 units on this lot. It's pretty big. And if you're talking about something like that in today's economy, that could be like worth like $18 million. So like, here's the math, right? All right. If I have, let's say I buy it for $1 million, and let's say that I put another $500,000 into it for the remediation, which I'm kind of like, dude, I don't care, just tear it out. It doesn't have to be careful. Sure. And let's just say that's also, I don't know, I spend another, let's say I end up spending like $1.8 million to buy it and to just turn it into dirt again. And that's working with the city and figuring out a plan and getting it shovel ready. You then could turn it to a developer and say, hey, I want 20% of whatever this final thing is. That's my contribution I'm bringing to this. And let's say that it is worth $18 million when it's all said and done. I would effectively double my money. Once it's built 6-7 years from now.
Right. Which, I mean, if you divide out a couple $1 million over 6-7 years, that's still not bad.
Yeah, no, totally. But I also think there's just better opportunities out there. Because doubling your money every 7 years is not not that amazing.
Yeah,
it's good.
Do other deals and get
exactly.
a better return quicker.
So that was one. I passed. I went, I'm good. I've got another one that is technically in the works. We shall see. It's another motel.
Which now I know means the doors are all on the outside and you can park in front of them and just go in like your own separate
Technically, though, this one is called an inn.